of China, about 240 miles southwest of Okinawa. And they've been in the news lately for the way that military activity has begun to bubble around these islands. In January of 2013, we had Japan alleging that China had penetrated the airspace of these islands, so Japan scrambled fighters. A few weeks later, we had Japan alleging that China had locked on to Japanese ships with fire control radar. Just last week, we had reports of China depositing buoys in the water around these islands. So far, it's stayed manageable, but of course, when people begin to do these things, there's always the opportunity for inadvertent slips. Heretofore being up until about 1970, the main claim to fame of these islands, there are 8 of them, with a total of about 4 square miles. That's not a mistake, 4 square miles, 8 islands, that's generating all this interest. And in the 1800s, China's main use for the islands was to get some medicinal herbs. In this century, Japan's main use for the islands has been to lease them to a private businessman who's used them to get feathers and guano for business. That began to change in 1970. A UN commission came out and talked about, for the first time really, talked about the fact that there may be billions of gallons of oil in the vicinity of these islands and trillions of cubic feet of natural gas near the islands, and the dynamic changed. China in 1971 said that these have always been part of China, and then in 1972 the U.S. gave them back to Japan as part of the wind down from World War II. Today, very, very superficially, the claims of the islands are Japan says that this was no man's land, terra nullius, and in 1895 annexed these islands and have exercised a degree of sovereignty over them ever since. China makes some historical arguments of its own, says that these were part of Taiwan, and that Japan illegally seized Taiwan in 1895 as part of the Russian-Japanese War, and it was supposed to give these back when it gave Taiwan back after World War II, and never did. So you see the sort of the depth and the complexity of their respective arguments summarized here in about 20 seconds. There are papers and books that have been written in great depth on this. At the risk of oversimplifying, one might give a slight edge to Japan.